So hi guys, welcome to the second class for speed math. So in this class, what we are going to do a different type of questions. That is previously what we did was let what is x percent of calculate x percent of y. This class will be considering x divided by y is what percent, right? Is what percent. That is something that we'll be doing, right? So let's take an example. Let's take 423 divided by 569. Let's say this is something that we have to calculate. Now the process is to understand the thought process so that we are able to calculate the approx value within 10 seconds, right? So the values that we have over here is somewhere close to 400, right? The value that we have over here is somewhere close to 560, 570, right? Now, if you see, or let's consider this as 420, right? So 420 by 570 is somewhere that we are hovering around, right? Now 570 at 50% will be what? Divided by 2, 57 divided by 2, 290. So we can see that the number is way above the 50% mark, right? Similarly, 570 ka 20% is going to be what? 50, 50, 100, 110, somewhere around 110. So 290 plus 110 is going to be somewhere around 400, right? So that means at the value of 400, we'll be arriving at 70%. That certainly means that my 420 is way above 70% mark. So the very simple thing that we'll be doing is 3 by 4, right? Doing 3 by 4 of it. 3 by 4 would mean what? 560 divided by 4 is 140 because 14 4s are 56. So this goes somewhere around 142. Right? 142 multiplied by 3, 14 3s are 42, 426. So the value turns out to be very close to 75%. And that is how you do it, calculated in a very fast and efficient manner. Okay, you take the approximate values, right? Kuch aur questions we'll be trying and doing it on this part. Okay. For example, let's say we have 116 divided by 340, 398, let's say. 398 ka 116. Right, so 116 is somewhere close to 120, 398 is somewhere close to 400, right? Yes, all these things have to be done mentally, right? That 120 divided by 400 is somewhere that we are going. 400 cut 10% is going to be 40. 40 multiplied by 3 we know is 120. So that certainly means that my number is going to be very close to 30% mark, right? Now among the options, whatever options you have, you can mark the one which is and see. Achha, see one more thing, that my number is below 120. Right. So my value is going to be below 30%. So there might be an option of 28% and there might be an option of 31%. Now 30% ke close doesn't mean that you mark 31%. You have to be aware of the fact that the number that you are looking for is below 120. Whereas this 30% ka mark you have calculated for 120. So if I'm going below 120, my value is going to be below 30%. And because of that, you will be marking your answer as somewhere around 28%. Right. So that is the approach that you have to follow. Okay, let's take another example. Let's say you have to calculate 235 divided by 747, right? 235 divided by 747. Now, how will you be calculating? So this number is somewhere close to 240. This number is somewhere close to 750, right? 750 ka 1 by 3, you know, is 250. That means you certainly know that your answer is going to lie below 33.33%. So this is one manner. अब इसमें let's say your options are 25%, your options are 32%, let's say your options are, let's say 37%, and your options are 43%. All right, so you can directly say that my answer is going to be 32%. Why? Because 750 mein convert kara by 3 we know is close to 250. And my value is very close to 240, 235. So it is definitely going to be below 33.33%, right? So you can directly, however, it's not going to be 32. I'm just giving it as an example. It should be somewhere close to 30%, but just for the sake of example, right? 30, 31% it would be. Okay. So it happens, it works in this manner, right? Your options, of course, because you're doing approximation, your options have to be far away. Right, your options necessarily have to be far away, because if they are close, if let's say one option is 30, one option is 31, one option is 32, one option is 31.5, in that case you will have to use your calculator and arrive at the exact answer, because you cannot take your chances. Don't take chances, right? You won't be able to take your chances in that, right? But whenever you see that your options are far apart, you can take that risk of approximation and you will very easily arrive at the answer. Right? Let's try some more questions. Let's see. Okay. Let's say what we have is 560 divided by 920. right? 560 divided by 920 is something that we are looking forward to, right? Now 920 ka half is going to be what? So let's calculate if it is above 50% or not. So 920 ka half is going to be divided by 2, that is 460. My answer is well above that. Another 10% you add. So another 10% is 92. So 92 we can write it as simply as 90. So I now know that 46 plus 9, that is 550, is going to be equal to my 60 percentage ka mark. My value is 560. That means another 10. Whereas 9.2 gives me a 1% ka value. 9.2 is my 1%. Right? So in that 60%, if I add 1%, or better to say, if I add 9, I arrive at a 559 and arrive at a 61% mark. So my 560 out of 920 is roughly going to be equal to 61%. Now among your options, you can easily mark 61% and you can move ahead. Yes, I say that you have to do it in 10 seconds, and this can actually be done in 10 seconds. But for doing it in 10 seconds, watching the class only is not sufficient. You will have to write down random values. You will have to keep practicing it so that you become well versed with all these values of, see, the values that we discussed the last time. I'll write them down again. So 1 by 1, 100%, 1 by 2, 50%, 1 by 3, 33.33%. Right? 1 by 4, 25%, 1 by 5, 20%, 1 by 6, 16.66, 1 by 8, 12.5, 1 by 9, 11.11, 1 by 11, 1 by 10, 10%, 1 by 11, 9.09%, right? 1 by 12, 8.33%, right? These are the values that you will have to remember, and you will have to, after watching this video, you will have to go back, write some random values and start practicing. And you don't have to practice this throughout. See, the only thing you have to practice it for is for 10 days, 10 questions every day on all the speed math classes that we'll be doing. If you do that, trust me, I can guarantee you that any question of approximation that comes your way, you will be able to solve it in under 10 to 15 seconds. That is something I can guarantee you. But yes, practice is of utmost importance. You will have to go back and do the practice part. All right. We'll solve some more questions to try and understand how does this thing work. All right. So let's say we have a value of 465 divided by 585. Let's say these are the values that I have. Right. So my this value is very close to 470. My this value is very close to 590. Right? So something what I can see is that these values are very close. This is going closer to 500. This is going closer to 600. Now 500 by 600 is simply 5 by 6. See, all this has to be done in your brain. 5 by 6 is 83.33%. Why 5 by 6 is 83.33%? Because 1 by 6 is 16.66%. So 5 by 6 would be 83.33%. So these values that you will have to remember, not only these values, but the multiples as well. The multiples also you will have to remember no matter what. Right? Then you have somewhere, so you can see if we increase my 465 to 500, it's going to be equal to somewhere around 83.33%. But my value is way too less than 500, right? So instead of 83.33%, you can check for 80%. So what value will give you 80%? The value of 4 by 5 will give you a 80% ka mark. Right? So what do you have? 585 multiplied by 455. This will give you 1, 1 and 7 multiplied by 400 into 4, 417 4 the 68. So you arrive at C, 468. So very easily by these values you arrive ki bhai this is going to be equal to 80% ka mark. This is going to be very close to 80%. And this is 468, so probably 3 points less. 3 points less is not even a 1%. So absolute answer, if you want to check, it's going to be 79.5%, somewhere around that. Right? So this is the manner in which your approximation and your percentage calculations are done. Right? Let's solve one more question over here. So we have a 216 divided by 848. Correct? 848. Now this value is close to 200. This value is close to 800. Right? So mota it's going to be somewhere around maybe 25%. Probably a 25% ka mark. So let's calculate. 25% is what? 1 by 4 into 848. So this will give you 212. So what we get is that my 25% mark is coming at around 212. However, what I have is 216. So that means I have another 4 and 848 ka 1% is going to be 8.48. So 0.5% is going to be what? 4.24. So if I add 0.5% into this, okay, if I add 0.5% to my 212, I will arrive at 216 and my final answer would look like 25.5%. So even you can arrive at the exact values, but the only thing important is practice. If you practice more, you can even arrive at the exact values and everything of this part could be done just mentally. That's the game. But practice is the game, right? The more you practice, the better you get at this, right? Let's solve two more questions on it and then we'll be moving towards the third type of speed math technique. Let's take any random number. Let's take a 4-digit number this time. Let's make things complicated for us. So 1337 divided by 4121. Let's say these are the values that we have. Now this value is very close to 1300. This value is very close to 4100. I know that from 4000, if I convert it to 4000 and if I convert it to 1200, what I see is that this becomes closer to 30% ka mark. Right? What I see is that this goes to being very close to 30% ka mark. Right? So let's calculate 25% for 4121. How do you calculate 25%? For calculating 25%, simply 4121 divided by 4. Right? What do you get? 1, 0, 3, 0, 1030, right? But your number is 1337, right? So 25% mark we see is turning out to be somewhere 1030, whereas we have to go a long way up. But now we know something, that my 25% is fixed. 25% is something that I've already calculated. Correct? Now what is the gap left? The gap left is of 307 points. Right? From 1030 to 1337, there is a gap of 307. Right? My 10% is going to be equal to 412. So when I do my 10%, it is crossing the value by a big margin. It crosses by a big margin. Right? So 412.1 is my 10% value. So what I will do, and it is crossing my overall value. So what I'll do is I'll calculate my 5%, that is divide this by 2. Dividing this by 2 will give me a 206. Right? So 1030 plus 206 gives you 1236. Correct? And we have added another 5%. Correct? Now we are left with just 100 points. Right? And my 1% is going to be 41.21. Right? If I add 2 times, if I add this 2 times, I go to 82.41. 41 will give me 82, 21 will give me 41. If I add another 82 to this, right? If I add another 82 to this, my final value will turn out to be equal to 1318, right? Now I have gotten very close to my 1337. I have already gotten to 1318. Right? So I can simply say that approximately my answer is going to lie at 25 plus 5, 30, 30 plus 2. My answer is approximately going to lie at around 32%. So 32% is going to be my answer. Right? अब mentally कैसे करना है? Mentally it's a very simple process. ठीक है? आपको केवल यहाँ पे all you have to do is 4100 का 25% calculate किया, you get it as 1030 points. Right? Similarly, then आपने 5% calculate किया, you get a 206 and पूरा approximation कैसे? 10% calculating 412 is very easy. 412 का half करना is very easy. 206. See, all this can be done mentally. 206. And apart from that, 40, 40, 80. So we are not getting to the exact value of 1337, but we are getting to an exact value of 1315 or 1316, which is very close. So that makes it pretty clear that, okay, my answer is going to lie at somewhere around 32%. Right? My answer is going to lie somewhere around 32%. Right? Uski aage bhi, if you want to move, you see that you have reached 1318. Right? 1% is 41. So half a percent will be what? Half a percent will be close to 20. Add 20 to it, you get a 1338. Now you have gotten even more closer. So another 0.5% if you want to add, you can add, and the final value that you will arrive at is 32.5%. And you open your calculator and see that our answer is going to be 32.5%. And you see, because see, I'm also doing it verbally only. I'm even making the questions in front of you and I'm solving those questions. Right? So this can be done. If I can do it, why can't you do it? That's the part. But why am I able to do it? Because I have practiced it for so long, right? So practice will help you in achieving all these things. Once you have practiced it enough, it becomes very simple for you. Now let's take another random example. Let's take 670 of, let's say 2120. Let's say these are the values that I've taken. Now my this value is very close to 700. My this value is very close to 2100. 7 by 21 is 1 by 3. That means my answer is going to lie somewhere around 33.33%. Correct? So let's calculate the 30% ka mark. Right? Any way you can do it. You can do it 1 by 3. You can do it 10% into 3. I want to, let's say, go by 10% into 3. So 10% is 212 multiplied by 3. 200 gives me 600. 12 gives me 36. Right? So I have arrived at 636. 636 I've already arrived at. Right? I still have 34 points to go. My 1% mark is 21. My 1% mark is 21. I only have 34 points to go. So that means if I add 1% to it, that is 21, I already reach at 657. I already calculated 30%. I have added 1% to it. I have already arrived at 657. Only next 13 is left. 13 of 21 is roughly around 60%. So another 0.6%. You arrive at the answer of 31.6%. Right? So that is how it has to be done. That is how upon practicing, you can calculate these values upon division. What number is what percentage of this number is this number. You can always calculate it under 10 to 15 seconds only if you practice well and if you remember these values and the multiples well. So once you are thorough with this, the calculation part, I guarantee you, be it with respect to your quant section, be it with respect to your LRDI section, you will find it very easy to solve. Right? So make sure that you start doing that. You start practicing. Not only watching the videos is important, but also practicing those videos is very important. Right? See you soon in the next class.